And we begin in South Africa, where U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton met privately on Monday with 94-year-old anti-apartheid icon Nelson Mandela on her multi-nation tour of the continent.
Secretary Clinton was warmly greeted by Mandela's wife, Graca Michelle, at their country home in the rolling hills near the village of Kunu. Upon meeting Mr. Mandela, Mrs. Clinton was quoted as saying, "That's a beautiful smile." Mandela's only term as president from 1994 to 1999 came during the time former U.S. President Bill Clinton was in office, with Mandela and the Clintons meeting often during that time. After a meeting with Mandela, Secretary Clinton traveled to Johannesburg to attend high-level meetings between U.S. and South African officials and business executives. South Africa is a major market for American goods, while the United States is a key export and investment market for South Africa.
Now, before arriving in South Africa, Secretary Clinton stopped in Malawi, where she praised President Joyce Banda for making key reforms since taking office in April. She says those reforms have boosted the impoverished country's economy, which prompted the U.S. to restore aid to Malawi. Mrs. Clinton also met with Kenyan leaders in Nairobi, where she urged all Kenyans to work together for a fair election next year without the violence of 4 years ago.
Of course, what happens in the elections is up to the people of Kenya. They're the ones who will make the decisions. But we, as a partner and friend, are certainly hoping that this election, which is a complex election, there are many different ballot positions that will all be voted on at the same time, goes so smoothly that everyone is so proud the next day.
Now, for more perspective on Secretary Clinton's multi-nation visit to Africa and her stop in Kenya, we're joined on Skype by VOA's Gabe Joselow from Nairobi. Hi, Gabe.
Hi, Ndimyake. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. So maybe you can give us some little insight into that conversation that Clinton had with the leaders of Kenya, specifically on the topic of the elections.
Yeah, well, Clinton arrived in Nairobi. She met with President Mwai Kibaki, Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and a host of other Kenyan officials. And definitely the election was really on top of her agenda. One of the things she was saying, as she was urging the country to make sure it has a free and transparent elections, was that it's not just important from a political standpoint, or even that it's just important to avoid the kind of violence they experienced last time, but that it also has an economic toll. And that when violence erupted in Kenya in 2007, 2008, the country lost about $1 billion. But more specifically, she went into meetings with the Independent Election Board to discuss electronic voting. The IEBC, the Independent Board, recently scrapped plans to have electronic voting to go back to a paper method. And Clinton was telling them that they'd prefer to see an electronic ballot because it's harder to manipulate, you get results quicker, saying that would restore confidence in the system. And her message actually echoes what a lot of presidential aspirants have said, including Prime Minister Raila Odinga. So that message probably did hit home with a lot of Kenyans, and it'll be interesting to see what the board finally does decide to do.
We're going to move on now to Malawi. Clinton is the first Secretary of State to visit Malawi, I believe, and she really offered continued support for the new president, Joyce Banda. Considering the tense relationship between U.S. and Malawi prior to Joyce Banda being inaugurated, what does this say about where the U.S. is going with Malawi?
Yeah, relations have really vastly improved since Ms. Banda took office in April, following the death of her predecessor. I mean, relations before with former President Bingu wa Mutharika were really strained, as you said, especially over his rights and governance record. I think, as you had mentioned earlier, the U.S. had frozen aid to Malawi, about $350 million that was meant to help fix up Malawi's electric grid because of concerns over that rights record, because of a violent crackdown on the opposition. Within 2 or 3 months of taking office, Ms. Banda had enacted these reforms, one of the most important being devaluing the Malawian currency to improve relations with foreign donors. And the international community has really reacted positively to that. And in June, the same U.S. development agency that had cut aid restored it. So very quickly, relations have improved. And also,
and Gabe, I know that there's a lot to say about Malawi, but before we go, we've got about 30 seconds left. She's currently in South Africa, where she met with former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. But there's more of a business and investment possibility that she's seeking in South Africa, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. There's an ongoing dialogue between the U.S. and South Africa. U.S. is the third largest trading partner for South Africa. So her visit there was as much to boost the economy and to boost ties in that realm as it was to just show off a very positive relationship between the two countries.
Gabe Joselow, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Nairobi via Skype.